Joining us now, by popular demand, Stephen K. Bannon is with us. He's the host of the War Room Pandemic, the hottest show in America. It's also on cable, channel 219, American Voice News. He's live on the John Fredericks Radio Network, syndicated from 10 to noon, Monday to Saturday. He's with us now. Thanks for being with us, Steve. We're live at Liberty University. You're with John Fredericks, of course, Dave Bratt, Scott Lamb, and
Ryan Helfenbein.
Thank you, Ryan. Steve, we're talking about China and the fact that people didn't realize, Dave was just telling us, I had no idea, that the Chinese companies that are on the stock exchange, Dave?
Yeah, all the index funds.
They don't have to have an audit. They have no balance sheet.
Right.
What is the deal with that?
This is Wall Street. I mean, it's kind of shocking. The American people are just finding out about this, that this has gone on for years. They've raised trillions of dollars from American pension funds. It's actually like a Greek tragedy. It's the American people, working class people's pension funds, insurance money, has basically, this institutional money has gone to finance these companies that have taken all the manufacturing jobs and put them in China. This was all financed by the American people. And now we're stripping the face off that and allowing people to see what we've been arguing for years. Now you're seeing a huge shift in momentum because of people like Dave Bratt, who for years fought for this in Congress. We've had some huge wins over the last couple of days. But all of these companies also are all controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, the PLA, or the Ministry of State Security, which is really their CIA and FBI combined. They all have commissars in there. They all have massive ownership. They're all controlled. Zoom, TikTok, Alibaba. Alibaba went public. It's really a Cayman Islands company. The American shareholders really don't own anything. And Jack Ma lied for years until they threw him out of the company and the Chinese took over more control. He's been a member of the Chinese Communist Party since he was a young man. Mm-hmm. There's only 90 million of the 1.4 billion people, only 90 million are communists. And of that, really the Communist Party is run by the 12 families that were really there for the Long March. It really goes back to the Revolution, the Civil War. Those 12 families they're also the richest families in the world. They're far wealthier than the Gulf Emirates. They're far wealthier than the Saudi royal family. This has nothing to do with communism. It has nothing to do with the precepts of the Sermon on the Mount, right? It has nothing to do with what true communism is as a system. It's a totalitarian dictatorship, just like the fascists in the 1930s, like the Nazis in the 1930s, like the Soviets. It's exactly the same thing. It's a group of gangsters, highly sophisticated, that know how to make a nation we're a tributary state. This is how they run their foreign policy for 4,000 years. They corrupt your elite. They make them financial partners. I was just on the phone when you called, John, with the senior editor of Yahoo News in Barcelona, which controls and they listen to the show every day on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and they're stunned by how the Chinese Communist Party has had such deep inroads to ownership in Europe, and nobody's ever talked about it. That Italy and Spain and these countries right now, because of One Belt, One Road, Made in China 2025, and Huawei, are essentially tributary states of the Chinese Communist Party.
So, Dave, what do we do about it?
Yeah, well, one thing you do is you vote for President Trump coming up. And Steve knows we had one of the top Chinese power families that he's talking about, the top 10. One of their assistants 10 years ago defected to our embassy in China. And it was an intelligence treasure trove. Unlike you cannot imagine the information. Our CIA folks, we've lost many CIA folks, et cetera, people giving up their lives for this. And instead of taking that intelligence, someone let him go back to China. Guess who that was? Joe Biden overruled the State Department. And Hillary Clinton, in her own book, quotes, "This will make the Chinese happy." I mean, you can't make it up, the difference, right, between President Trump and Biden establishment billionaires. It's not like he likes the Chinese. He likes billionaires. And he knows he's got to grease the skids for the billionaires to get into China, which they've been doing, what Steve's talking about. And so the choice is so stark. And the American people do not know this because the American people are good people, right? At the gut level, they're going to do the right thing. But Steve's war room is just right. People do not know. This isn't like the beginning of a Cold War. We're in a war. We're in an information, economic, cyber war with China. They are coming after us. They've declared war on us. and we're not awake yet. And Steve always quote one of my favorite quotes is Reagan. They said, "What's Reagan's strategy with respect to Russia, the Soviet Union, and this Committee on Present Danger?" And Reagan said, "How about you lose, we win?" Right?
Yeah.
Not appeasement, not half and half, not business as usual. No, it's like, how about we made friends with our arch enemies, right? The Germans, Japanese, they're now our friends.
Right.
And we've enriched them and the world with human rights and everything. And now China is the wrecking ball. And it's unacceptable. The Judeo-Christian strand across the country ought to be in open outrage. The Pope ought to be speaking. Where is he? He's nowhere to be found.
So
and Steve's been leading the day.
Well, Steve's leading the charge. Steve, you were the master strategist that really got Trump elected in 2016. Is what you're saying about China?
Hang on, let me be. President Trump got himself elected. I gave a couple of pointers, as Dave Pratt knows. No, we had the greatest candidate ever. So hopefully we can recreate that here in 2020.
My question to you is this. Jerry Falwell Jr. has come in. We're going to get him involved. Hi, Jerry. Great to have you with us. We got Steve Bannon on the line.
Hello, Steve.
Hey.
Good to be with you, John. Yeah.
What you and Dave said, can you turn this into a campaign issue? Can people really understand what is going on with China and how critical it is that Trump get reelected? Can you turn this into an issue that average people can grasp?
Don't forget this. It was the issue in 2016. Remember, we won the Upper Midwest. We won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and also Ohio and Iowa because of this issue of trade. President Trump, said in the State of the Union, he says now, in all likelihood, he realized at the time that trade was such a important issue, particularly those Upper Midwest states. This is the framing device for 2020, and as Dave Brett said, Congressman Brett said, Joe Biden's record is just atrocious. More of that record is going to come out. When Obama did the pivot to Asia, he put Biden in charge. And Biden's record with the Chinese is absolutely abysmal. That just has to be hammered home every day during this pandemic when you've had your job destroyed, your pension fund destroyed. You can look and it's in a framing of how we've allowed the Chinese Communist Party to become such a dominant world economic power, enslave their own people, right? Eviscerate Christianity and every other religion inside of China. There's 100 million evangelical Christians in China that are literally tortured and tormented every day of their lives. Mm-hmm. We've allowed that to happen. President Trump is the first president ever to stand up to the Chinese Communist Party and to bring them to account. And he's going to hold them more account. What's happened over the last 2 weeks is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. He stopped investing in the Thrift Savings Plan. He's now going to delist these companies. He's confronting China at the World Health Organization. Across the world, whether it's information war, whether it's cyber war, whether it's economic, where there's a hot war right now between us and the Chinese communists, President Trump is in full confrontation mode. Joe Biden, and this is the key point, on January 31st, when you had to make a decision, President Trump went against all of the medical experts who agreed with the World Health Organization because they don't agree with borders and said, don't shut down travel to China, you'll send the wrong signal. President Trump, against all of his medical advisors, took a bold move, not just to shut down travel, but also to quarantine people. It had not been done in 70 years. Joe Biden, at that moment, chose to back the party line in Beijing. He called Trump a nativist. He called him a xenophobe. He called him a racist. Exactly the propaganda that the Chinese Communist Party. So Joe Biden's chosen his side. It's just simply now you got to bring it out every second of every day.
And Steve, all the things you just said that President Trump has been the first president to do with China, we're supposed to blindly believe that this virus just was a coincidence coming from China at this point in history.
Exactly.
That's what drives me crazy. It's, all I'm saying is it needs to be investigated whether or not it was intentional, either intentionally done or intentionally ignored after it was after it leaked out. Who knows?
President Falwell, listen, here's the thing. Let's set aside the investigations going on in the Wuhan P4 lab and whether they have a bioweapons plan. Now, we have the Five Eyes intelligence. We have major medical. We're getting to the bottom of that. I think you're going to find that it did come from the lab. Okay, it's like a biological Chernobyl. Leave that aside. We now know we have a chain of title of their decisions from late December of 2019, when Taiwan told the World Health Organization they knew they had human-to-human transmission and community spread in late December of the first week. This is the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing knew that. And Southampton University in London did a study. 95% of the deaths, 95% of the economic carnage would have been avoided if they had just stood up at the time. They did. They did the exact opposite. They stopped domestic travel in China and allowed global travel, understanding they had something they couldn't control in China. They just exacerbated it and blew it out throughout the world. They're guilty. There'll be a Nuremberg-type trial in Wuhan one day with the free citizens of China as the jury to hold these guys in account like they held the Nazis account in the 1940s. These guys are worse than the Nazi parties. They've had a crime against humanity. President Trump is the first leader we've had that's demanding to be held to account. So it's going to be, to me, this is the defining issue of the 2020 election. And on this, Trump beats Biden 98-2.
I couldn't agree more, Steve. I just think it's just obvious. It's just common sense. And I don't have any proof of what they did or didn't do like you do, but I wasn't born yesterday, and I don't think we should bury our heads in the sand out of political correctness. It's just it's ridiculous, or xenophobia, whatever they call it. I don't know, but it's just enemies attacking us. Period.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in one of Steve's friends, Bill Gertz, on the point President Falwell's making. We know there's 2 viral labs in Wuhan, the district, right? So that defies, right? It's a cruel joke that we don't have the evidence yet. But one of our friends, Bill Gertz, at the Washington Times reported last week that administration sources have said there is an aggressive bioweapons program underway in China aimed at minorities, right? The Uyghurs. The Chinese have 2 million Turkic Muslims in concentration camps in western China. That is all known, and that's being reported by Bill Gertz at the Washington Times. And so the evidence is trickling in, and justice will come due.
Look, as President Falwell's father had Ronald Reagan's back in the 80s for the takedown of the Soviet Union, and that's what we did. In 8 years, we took it down. We have to come together to support President Trump for the takedown of the Chinese Communist Party. This is the unfinished work of the 20th century. These people are gangsters. They've committed crimes against humanity. These bioweapon programs have to be stopped, and they have to be defeated.
All right, Steve Bannon, I want to thank you for joining us here on the John Fredericks Radio Network.